Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to talk about the TC Electronic Booster plus Line Driver and Distortion pedal. So let me quickly shout out Twin Town Guitars in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They have incredible high-end and vintage guitars, amps, and an array of pedals. This is a place that I went to on our honeymoon and was really excited about going back, especially with things being more opened up now. And they're just really awesome guys at an awesome shop. Definitely check them out if you're in the area. And I picked up this pedal here, the Booster plus Line Driver and Distortion. So this is a part of the original 5 guitar effects made by TC Electronic. The first one being the stereo chorus plus flanger, which came out in the late 70s. And then through the years following that, probably over the next 3 to 5 years, we saw 4 more pedals come out. And the second of which was this Booster plus Line Driver and Distortion. Then we saw the programmable phaser, the sustain plus parametric EQ, and then the dual parametric EQ. And those are the original 5 TC Electronic pedals, and we're probably most familiar with the chorus. It is a staple of an 80s chorus pedal. You still see them around. I would love to do a demo of that and the rest of this original 5 lineup from TC Electronic. But this is a pedal that is kind of quintessential for a few different genres in the early 80s. Maybe most notably is Scott Ian of Anthrax is really known for using this, and of course Allan Holdsworth. And that's who really drew me to this pedal, is that especially the early 90s Allan Holdsworth sound. This pedal has that. In my mind, although I can't really find anything confirming that he ever did or didn't use this pedal, but to me there is an early Michael Landau thing about this pedal as well, which is a huge influence on me, and that's just kind of the place that this pedal puts me in as a drive pedal, is that mid to late 80s session guitarist sound. It's becoming harder and harder to find really any of these original 5 TC Electronic pedals, and as soon as I was able to put my hands on this one, I just knew that this was the sound that I've been really into lately, is that, you know, 80s session guitarist, that Allan Holdsworth, Michael Landau, maybe Steve Lukather vibe. Not that they're all noted with using this pedal, but definitely Allan Holdsworth is. And it's really a versatile pedal that has a powerful EQ, and we'll kind of explore a few of those different things that this pedal can do in the demo, so let's get into it. All right, so here we are with the Booster plus Line Driver and Distortion. This pedal kind of does a few different things. One, it is a really awesome boost with a powerful EQ. And in boost mode, it is only the volume, bass, and treble that are functioning. There's also a noise suppressor circuit on this little mini knob here. And then it has distortion mode, which then activates the distortion knob, and that's going to be your gain. And there is also on the side here an XLR output that is going to be kind of in parallel with your 1/4 inch output. And in the manual that says that it's great for live recording, kind of going straight to a board. So we're going to kind of listen to that, maybe listen to it with some cab sim as well at the end. But let's start with our boost. First, let me tell you about the signal chain. So I'm using this Band of Gypsies Showmaster, which is a guitar that I had as a kid. It was one of the first guitars that I bought with my own money, and so it's a pretty sentimental thing to have another one again. And I'm going straight into the Booster plus Line Driver Distortion. That's going into the Smart Bell Dumble ODS style head, into the Little John Cabs prototype number 1, loaded with EVM 12Ls, mic'd with a Shure SM57 and a U87 clone. Here is my clean tone on the neck pickup. Pretty sterile. I don't have the mids really scooped, so it's a fairly flat sound. And then we're gonna start with the boost here. Bass and treble are on noon. You can hear it's starting to push the front end of the amp once you start boosting the bass and treble, and this has an enormous amount of volume on tap. This is on 2 here, so if we just crank that up a little bit, we'll bring these back to flat. That's on the bridge pickup, which is a humbucker here, and it is sending the amp into a really nice, crispy distortion. That is a really organic sound there. But if you wanted to just boost a little bit, and especially the low end, is really nice on this pedal, but if you boost both the bass and treble, you're going to get a little bit of a mid scoop. It is really powerful with that EQ, how you can hit the front end of the amp different. And then we're going to put the noise suppressor on. I find that this is actually really a subtle noise suppression, but you also got to think about this is circa 1981, 1982, so noise suppressors were really in their early state. This one is incredibly musical for being such an early noise suppressor. Noise gate, I mean, early ones, the gate would close so drastically you didn't really have much control over it. I find them typically not very musical to play with, but this one is surprisingly so for being as old as it is. So you can hear it kind of close there. I'm pretty much going to leave it off. We'll hear it again quickly on the distortion mode. So let's bring everything back to noon here and then put it in distortion mode. So this is with the distortion all the way down. You can hear there, it is really transparent. With everything at noon, it is shockingly transparent, and just adding a little hair to the note. So if we turn up the distortion a bit, being a distortion, it cleans up pretty well from the guitar. I mean, not quite as much as like an overdrive, more like a tube screamer or something. But for being an early distortion, sometimes when you roll back, it gets really thin. And this doesn't do that as much. Still retain a lot of thickness. Let's boost both the bass and treble, give it a little more drive here. Threw it out of tune a little bit there. This is a great 80s sound. It's like the distortion is all the way up. We're boosting both the bass and treble. And for me, it's the perfect amount to where even all the way up on the distortion, it's almost not quite enough if you're just playing by yourself. But in a mix, that's really perfect. You can't oversaturate and muddy up your signal really with this. And it has a great 80s rhythm, kind of singing leads without being incredibly overbearing or taking over your kind of raw tone. Adds a lot of harmonic content in the mid-range that compresses really nicely while retaining a pretty wide openness on the top end and the low end. However, it's not really shrill. It kind of rolls off and compresses the really upper echelon, maybe like the presence, if you will. So it doesn't get too ice picky by any means. But it's got a lot going on here. We're gonna dime both the bass and treble. So it's got a lot of saturation. That's the maximum amount of gain. It's really juicy, really compressed, and immediately puts me in the kind of an 80s shred session kind of mindset. I mean, it's tons of fun to play, but I find it really musical if you boost both the treble and the bass, and you're not maxing everything out necessarily. It's really thick. It's just enough gain to kind of get you where you want to be harmonically, and kind of the feedback with the strings, just the way it feels. But it's also not too much that is completely overpowering your tone. But it's enough, you know, to really sing, stand out in a mix, and be really thick. That's the thing, is there a lot of thickness in this without being overly scooped or anything. But the low mid-range is really strong, and that's where I find the most like harmonic content with this pedal, is in that lower mid-range. There's a lot of mid-range in the like low mid-range harmonic content that to me makes it really thick, and really singing, but not overly distorted or overly saturated. This is kind of the place that I find the most inspiration out of this pedal. Is a lot of gain for me, but definitely not the most gain that this pedal can produce. But it's just enough for a mix. And this is the kind of spot to where I think that this pedal thrives, and it puts me in a very 80s, not that I can even shred like an 80s player by any means, but it puts me in that mindset of like, what would Alan Holdsworth, Michael Landau, like how would they phrase something? And that's really where this pedal to me thrives. The noise gate is definitely more apparent in the distortion mode. I still think that's fairly musical. Again, this is one of the earliest pedals that had a noise gate built in. This is, you know, the initial few years where noise gates were really becoming popular, and the technology was still fairly new. So again, I think it's pretty musical. However, it's enough to where I don't see myself ever using the noise gate on there, but it's impressive, you know, nonetheless. So let's quickly, before we're done, let's listen to the XLR output of this and just kind of see what happens running it straight into the Apollo and into Logic here. All right, so here we are, and we're plugged in through the XLR output, going straight into the Apollo. And what I'm using is the Sir Pete Thorn PT100 Brainworks amp plugin, but I've got the preamp bypassed, and we're using the Pete Thorn 412. It's number 5 if you have this Universal Audio Brainworks plugin. And what it is a Marshall 1960B cab from 1978 with Celestion G12M black 75 Hertz speakers, and the microphones for this IR is a SM57 and a Sterling ST170. The preamp is a BAE Audio 1073, and we're at 1200 ohms. This is a pretty cool way to use this vintage pedal with the most recent technology here, with this Brainworks PT100. So here is the clean tone. So let's listen to the pedal kind of straight up in the middle. So this is basically just going straight in using the Celestion IRs in the PT100 plugin. And immediately, I mean, I think of Def Leppard and using the Rockman straight into the board. This feels like that. This is that era of pedal that, you know, was out around the same time. And it has that sound to it. We can dime it here. I'm gonna lay off the low end just a little bit. Yeah, it is that early 80s, I don't know, just specifically that Def Leppard thing. That is not at all what this pedal is trying to emulate in any way, but to me, just, you know, running the line out into a cab IR, it already has that 80s feel to it, and it makes me want to play just really simple power chords or something. And it puts me in this really single note melodic place mentally. Just the way this drive pedal interacts with the guitar, I think is unique in that way and reminiscent of the time and the tones that I really love that were a big part of what kept me playing guitar as a kid. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video on this vintage TC Electronic booster plus line driver and distortion. It is a classic 80s drive pedal that packs a lot in a small platform. Having the noise gate that I think is really impressive for the time that this was developed and released. I think the XLR line out and the abilities that you can, you know, use this as a preamp, even though that's not really what it is, but the powerful EQ and preamp side of this pedal is definitely enough to get you some classic 80s straight into the board distortion sounds. But most importantly, it is reminiscent of my favorite era of session players in the early 90s, mid to late 80s, and a singing drive that's really harmonically rich, but not overwhelmingly saturated with distortion. Again, I kind of look at that, this specific pedal being Alan Holdsworth's sound, but also that Steve Lukather, Michael Landau. It's in that same terrain, in that same ballpark of drive, and ultimately the way that this pedal makes me play different is what I really love about it. Not only is it a cool vintage piece of gear, but it really does feel totally different than other drives that I have, and ultimately that's what I love, is how it makes me play different. When I step on this, I'm gonna play something totally different than if I stepped on a different drive pedal. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, I please ask that you like and subscribe to this new channel, share it with your friends. Once again, I want to shout out Twin Town Guitars in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You can visit them at twintown.com. Check out the stuff that they have, loads of gear, great guys, and until next time, I've been Colin. Here we go again. So let me quickly shout Allen's Holdworth down. So here we are with the brain video on this. That all sucked. Okay. That sucked too. Okay, here we go. Okay. It would make me play something different. What the fuck does that mean? Okay. We're gonna start it over again. Okay.